Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking the first of two looks through my vintage Doctor Who paperback collection. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look. Okay then, so my Doctor Who collection is sorted in published order. So this was the very first Doctor Who book which came out from Armada, which were traditionally children's publishers, back in 1964, and this was a reprint of the hardback. It had been hardback beforehand. Now, a lot of these Doctor Who books I've had multiple copies of through my hands over the years, and I've constantly upgraded them. Now, I haven't quite got them all, so I think I'm missing about 15 to 20, and the videos that I made on the Target books when I first started my channel, which was 4 years ago now, my main channel, have proved to be extremely popular, and I'm going to go back and revisit these early Doctor Who books. But before I did, I wanted to make sure that the copies that I had were as clean as I could possibly make them, and also when I'm going through just to see if there were any upgrades or potential upgrades that I needed to do. So this is probably by far the most expensive book we'll see today. This is an original copy of the Dalek Pocket Book by Panther, part of my Panther collection, and I would say this one regularly sells for about 60 to 65 pounds. When I started the channel, I didn't really do much in the way of cleaning books. It was at a time when I just started doing them, and some of the earliest books I seem to remember cleaning were actually the Doctor Who books as I was picking them up. So that one's actually not too bad. It's a notoriously difficult one to find in high grade. However, it has been sort of reprinted. Then a couple more 60s ones, so all different publishers. This is a Green Dragon, and this is another one which was published in hardback first, and then it got paperbacked. And all these, of course, came out before the familiar Target books in the 1970s, and we've got an awful lot of those to go through soon. But these all seem fine, except I am going to be giving them all a polish, which I don't think they've ever really had. And where they've been stored, I'll give them a brush. I did take a photo of these in situ, which I'll pop up on the screen now, because over the last sort of 3 or 4 years since they've been in that position, they've got dusty. And because these had some vintage badges on top, which I've also pulled out, that's those ones there, they're really dusty. I've not pulled these all out to give them a decent clean, so their time has very much come. This is another copy of the Daleks. This is the American one. This is an Avon. This is the US one. They used one of the old 60s toys on the jacket there. And once again, quite a nice copy of this one, and one which is fairly difficult to find in nice nick. So in actual fact, those early four, that's the 60s ones, that's literally it in paperback for 60s. I'm really pleased with those. Then the series got launched, or sort of relaunched, by these guys, Target Books, which is part of WHL, and the early Target books, the first three, have all got this partial ISBN on the back. You see the number there was 10129 and then 4. It says 10129. It was just an identification. And this one's a little bit faded, but I wanted these Target books in their first printings, which is how I always used to historically keep them. And I wanted them in tip-top shape as well. And these are, on the whole, really nice condition copies, but with a little bit of wear, dust rather, on the front, and a bit of polishing required. But these are great, and the new series that I'm intending to do, a bit of a mark there on the side. I was tempted to get a bit of sandpaper on that. I don't know. Is it coming off? What I'm intending to do with these Doctor Who books is do Doctor Who year by year. So I'll do 10 or so books per video, whatever came out that year. In massive detail, who the cover artists were, what the print runs were, and things like that, because all that sort of information is available now online. But I do want to get the full set before I really tackle it. I want to have at least the one in first edition. I have got quite a few of the reprints, because I do collect these in later printings, and if they've got different covers, I collect them in those editions as well. Remember, this one was a tough one to track down, quite dusty along the top there. These early ones now, when you think these are 50 or more years old now, virtually. These were 1973, so those are 50 years old. And these later ones are from 74. Trying to find really nice condition copies is obviously getting harder and harder. So I am very, very pleased with the ones that I've got. But there's always room for improvement, isn't there? Always. But I'm hoping, even though I filled an entire comic box up with these, literally I couldn't fit another box in. That was almost exactly half of the collection. So I have got more to come next week. Well, I might do a large format video, then do the second part of Doctor Who next week, or I might just do the two back to back. I'll see how I get on. It might be just as easy to do them back to back. However, as you may have noticed, if you've been keeping bang up to date with all my videos, is that last week, for the first time since the channel launched, I didn't have time to do a video. I literally had run out of time. I had 3 days away in London with the wife, and we haven't been away for a while, and it just meant that with my workload, my normal workload, plus filming for the other channel, I just didn't have time to fit this video in. So well, here it is now, and hopefully normal service has been resumed. Now, during the month of April, I have got some training for a new role I'm taking on at work, which is going to require me to temporarily go back to full-time for at least a week or so. However, around that, I have got some of the time off, so I'm hoping that there won't be any other sort of interruptions to my output. But the main thing is, I hope you've enjoyed watching some of the older videos maybe on the channel, you know. But boy, oh boy, these are lovely, aren't they? And at the moment, they're all in really nice condition as a general rule. They're not mint, but they're still very, very nice copies, so I'm pleased with these. These books meant so much to me when I was a kid, because, you know, they hadn't been released on DVD or video. The amount that the BBC was actually showing in repeat form was minuscule at the time. You know, there were hardly any repeats at all. So this was another way to like relive those classic adventures. Nowadays, of course, you can watch any of the surviving episodes at the touch of a button, but back then they just weren't around, you know. So they meant an awful lot to me, you know. And I would say that these Doctor Who books were, without a doubt, these were the very first books that I ever started collecting properly as an adult. Or not as an adult, but as a child. Prior to that, I had been collecting the Mr. Men books, which were just coming out, but they were sort of something for the, you know, when I was really young. I love that cover. And my mum was buying me those, and I was sort of collecting them. But these were books that I would sort of go out with my pocket money and actively search for ones that I didn't have to pick up. And that one's actually signed there by Terence Dix. And I always loved the these earlier editions, because lots of these had different covers over the years, and it was always the early ones that I really loved. I particularly like these. These are a bit sort of comic bookish, weren't they? They're great stuff. I've got spotted throughout the collection. I have got ones which have been signed by various cast members or authors, or, you know, people who worked on that particular story, you know. And I used to have so much more. So back in the day, before I got really into collecting Star Wars, I had quite a good Doctor Who collection, and I actually sold it all. I thought, well, I just can't collect it all, so I sold all my Doctor Who stuff. I had some 60s toys, but I had a full run of all the books, every single one, and many of them were multi-signed. My copy of the Five Doctors paperback, it's got a little 20p in there, but it's in pen. My copy of the Five Doctors paperback was signed by Troughton, Pertwee, Peter Davison, and then a host of companions who were actually in that episode. And I do regret getting rid of that one. You never get that again. That's great, isn't it? That was cover swiped from an episode, a Fantastic Four comic. But yeah, these books mean an awful lot to me. They really, really do. And I didn't want to just rush these out. And there was more than I thought. There is easily 2 full boxes. So, as I said, I'll do the 1 box today. And by the look of it, it's not going to take too long. But I'm being quite thorough with them. But there's an awful lot of books, because of course some of these, when they were getting released in the 70s, these are fairly sturdy. They're quite like sturdy books. Some of the ones in the 70s, which we're seeing them in, are really thin, and they barely scrape 100 pages. And it's almost like they've been churned out formulaic, like by the authors, you know, and they're not particularly great reads. Whereas some of the early ones and some of the later ones, they get the original authors back, or the original writers, and they add bits to it that they could not do on screen, you know. There's a bit there, it's going to benefit from a bit of polishing and that. But yeah, the plan is to do these Doctor Who books in a lot more detail, literally a year at a time. So I'll do like the first year of Target and the 60s ones before it. And then that'll be 73, and I'll do all the ones from 74, 75, 76. I'm going to do it right the way through. I think it's going to be pretty cool. But it's going to require research, and I wanted to make sure I had the full set before I started. And as I said, I'm very, very close. I don't need that many. And it's all later ones. It's not the earlier ones. It's the ones, sort of Sylvester McCoy era ones, which were less nostalgic for me, because I'd stopped reading them at that point and moved on to other stuff. But just going back through them all here, it's been quite a while since as I said, 4 years since I've been through these. So it's great to have another look at these first editions, all these classic Christos Achilles covers. So here's an example of one which is particularly thin. This one actually is, look, this is the first one which I think I need to put on my upgrade list, because this is rough. This is ropey, this first edition of Planet of the Daleks. So I'll put this one on my upgrade list. I had no idea, you see, that this one was this low. So yeah, upgrade Planet of the Daleks. This was a good one. I remember this one scaring me quite a bit as a kid in 1976. And that was the thing with Doctor Who, wasn't it? You enjoyed being scared. This is another one which I wouldn't mind getting another copy of, because it's got some Tipex in. I do seem to vaguely remember when I started picking these up again, I bought a few off a collector. They were really nice nick, but they'd had a bit of Tipex put in. So I'm going to make a note of Pyramids of Mars as well. I can't imagine any of these are ridiculously difficult to get hold of, even in first edition. Carnival of Monsters there. Seeds of Doom. It's funny sort of picking this up. I just remember even getting it at the time. I remember a friend of mine had one, and his was signed by Tom Baker, who appeared locally. He was doing a little tour, literally in costume, dressed as the Doctor, and my friend got a copy of that signed by Tom. I remember getting this one as well. I can remember as a kid going into Debenhams is where I bought this one, Dalek Invasion of Earth. What a jacket that is, and I think it's perhaps I think it probably is my favourite Chris Achilles cover, that one. Just stunning. God, that's great. I think, as I said, I've got some signed ones. I've got a reprint of this, which is signed by Roberta Tovey, who played Susan in the movie adaptation of this, and also Carol M. Ford, who was the first companion, of course. But those ones are sort of separate, so we'll see those in the next Doctor Who one. And that'll be in part 2, because as I said, I can get all of these done in 2 hits, basically. Had a bit of, I don't know, something in there. A great one on it, Ark in Space. That was another absolute stonking story. Season 12, which was one of my all-time favourite series of Doctor Who, or seasons of Doctor Who, I should say. I remember Ian Martin. I met him a couple of times. He was such a nice guy. Taken far too young. Brain of Morbius, that's a pretty nice copy. I think this one's quite scarce, you know, in first print. So I'm hoping this is a first printing. Yeah, it says so, 1977, so good stuff. Here's an example of they starting to go very, very thin. I think the thinnest one's Image of the Fendal. A few of these have got a little, like, it looks like a little remainder mark on that one. I know some of the Doctor Who books were remaindered. Let's make a bit of room here. Some of them were remaindered, and as new jackets came out, for example. This is a thinny, The Mutants, 126 pages. They're being quite tight, aren't they? Being quite tight with their page counts. Deadly Assassin. Now there is a very lively Doctor Who Target book group on Facebook, which is brilliant. It's a great site. I've been a member for several years now, and there used to be a guy who would always have doubles for sale, first printings and reprints, and the later Virgin editions as well. Another great story. But I don't think Nigel he's called. I think Nigel something. I don't think he tends to trade that much anymore. Or maybe he's just was having a break. But I remember he used to be very reasonably priced, you know, compared to what some of the books were selling for, seemingly on eBay, you know. Face of Evil. And you can see these are pretty quick reads, aren't they? In a lot of cases. Some of mine have got a little bit of spotting, like that one. Tiny bit of spotting, but apart from that, it's absolutely fine. Now this one's got a faded spine, so I'll make a little note of this. So Tomb of the Cybermen, you see the yellow on the spine is faded there, which is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. And apart from that, it's a nice copy. Time Warrior, season 11. This one's a little bit grubbier than I would like, to be honest. It may liven up a bit when we get the brush on it, but it's a bit mottled on the edges. Yeah, it's sort of foxed, that one. I think I'm going to put that on my upgrade list as well. So the Time Warrior upgrade. Death to the Daleks. Another nice cover on that one. 1978 on these now. Android Invasion. And you can't underestimate just how popular these books were when they were published. I mean, they were massive. This copy of I mean, that's like, I'd say virtually, apart from the dusty top, which we're going to sort out in a minute, that's a really nice neck, that one. Hand of Fear. Anyway, suffice to say, I am glad to be back cleaning up more of the collection. I think this is probably the thinnest one. Look, Invisible Enemy. I think these are really scraping the barrel, aren't they? Well, this is 110 pages, so not exactly a thick book, is it? But condition-wise, it's okay. And Robots of Death, another great one, wasn't it? .108 pages, that one. That was Terrence Dicks. And this one here, this is the one, Image of the Fendal, was the one I always thought was the thinnest one out of them all. Same as that, 108 pages. I mean, when you think that's, you know, that was a 4-episode Doctor Who story, there's literally been nothing extra added to that at all. It's almost a bit of a cop-out, isn't it? Carrying on then with the War Games. Patrick Troughton one that hadn't been done up to that point. That one's alright. Another thinny, Destiny of the Daleks. I think, yeah, that was the first Andrew Skilleter jacket. Once again, you know, only 109 pages. There's not a lot to it, was there? Ribos Operation. I noticed they've started putting the cover artist on the back there, on that one anyway, which will be handy when I come to do my, there's dust there, my dedicated videos. That was a good story, I seem to recall. I haven't watched that one in a while. Stones of Blood. So yeah, as expected, these weren't in too bad shape, with the exception of they were just a bit on the dusty side. And as I said, they've never ever been polished. So a few of them have got slightly sort of muddier surfaces, which are going to sort of benefit from having a bit of a clean. Let's start a fourth pile here. Power of Kroll. And of course, by this point, they were basically releasing a Doctor Who book a month, and it was almost like a machine, wasn't it? A Doctor Who factory of fiction. This is where they slightly changed format, and I think this was definitely for the better. I don't know whether they had a different editor or something, but the books just became a bit better. Now that's another one which has got some, in the light you can sort of see surface marks and stuff on it, so that's going to benefit from a clean. But yeah, this is a slightly different format, and I think they were an improvement, because they got a bit stale. They all had the same white sort of spines, and they weren't as exciting as the early ones. I guess because they were knocking them out at such a pace, they almost couldn't keep on top of it. And of course, don't forget, a lot of these had hardback editions as well as they were coming out. Usually a month or two before the paperbacks, sometimes even longer than that. And I used to have a few of the hardbacks, but I don't anymore. I've got a friend who bought all the hardbacks from the early 80s. He's got the whole run. Not all the 70s ones, but he's got a lot of them, and the ones he's got are mint because he bought them brand new and really made a point of hunting them down back then. So he did well. There we are. That was got a neon logo for An Unearthly Child, the very first Doctor Who story. State of Decay. A little bit of page edge browning on that one. A friend of mine owns the original artwork to that, a friend called Dale Santos in the States. To the Peter Davison era now. Release is coming up. That was Tom Baker, of course. So tail end of Tom Baker and then to Peter Davison. That one's got a little stain on. I mean, it's not ridiculously bad, but I might make a note of it because it's really easy to get, I'm certain. There we are. Here's the introduction of Peter Davison, the Visitation, one of the very first bits of Davison memorabilia. And the covers started using photograph jackets for a little while now, but I think they could only use a photo of the most current Doctor. So when this was published, obviously Tom Baker had already left the role. He'd regenerated into the fifth Doctor. So for the earlier Doctors it was artwork and without the actual Doctor on the front. And for the current stories they could put the Doctor on the front. A bit of a sort of a weirder decision that, but there you go. But as I said, my collection is in published order rather than like the chronological order. This is the order that they were published in, including stuff like this, the odd quiz book and crossword book and puzzle book, that sort of thing. These are very difficult to find, of course, because, well, they're designed to be filled in. So those ones actually in fresh print are quite tough to find. Time Flight, a rather forgettable season 19 story, as I recall. Well, that was actually signed by Davison, that one. If I got the books, I've generally only picked them up or saved them if they're flat signed, so note without dedication, and generally speaking they have to be the correct person who's been in that story or connected with it, if at all possible, else I didn't really want them. I wouldn't have like a Jon Pertwee story signed by Tom Baker, it just doesn't seem right to me. God, very, very dusty. Some of these are going to be quite dusty when we get to the polishing stage. But as I said, I absolutely squeezed the box full because, as I said, I got 2 loads of it to do, and it does mean, although they don't need a lot of work, there's still a lot of books here to get through. Right, nice little wedge here. And Terminus, my nomination for the worst Doctor Who cover ever. Absolutely awful. Hated it when it came out, and I still hate it today. A child could have done something better than that. God, they are awful, these, aren't they? Jackets, just disgusting. When you think how popular Doctor Who was at this point, I suppose they pulled the fingers out for that one, didn't they? With the 5 Doctors, we'll let them off slightly. I remember reading this one when it first came out, and literally it was about a week before the actual show went out, and loving it. There we are, and then the last one. So we're up to Kinder. Kinder. Nothing to do with the eggs. 1983. There we are. Right. Okay, so that's all the books we're going to be looking at today. So the next thing we need to do, I'm going to go through and give them all a brush. Right then, so back to the start, and we're going to give these early ones a brush now. Now, these have never been brushed, and they've never been polished either. So they're going to benefit from both things, but we'll do the brushing first, and then the polishing at the very end. And get the old Mr. Sheen in action. Now, some of these have actually been stored sideways on, which I don't like to do, but sometimes I have to out of necessity. So some will be worse than others, dust-wise, I think. And we've certainly seen a few dusty ones, haven't we? The main thing I wanted to do is definitely to keep these all in order, because they are quite tricky. Because I've done them by date order, I just want to make sure I'm not mixing them up if I can help it. Obviously it doesn't take too long to go through and brush brush these down. I'm not seeing any really bad ones, except the couple that we've mentioned as potential upgrades anyway. But these books are always just so great, weren't they? There are more than one collector who collects them all in every single edition, every single printing. I'm just happy with one of each cover, to be in all honesty. Lovely. Now these ones were all the really thin ones, really thin novelizations. So let's pull a wedge of these out. It's quite nice that they're not all going up in plumes of dust like we have had in the past. Some pretty superficial, in actual fact, which is a pleasant surprise. But at least I know when I put these back on the shelf that they've been given a thorough once over, as it were. And I'm glad I picked out a couple that need upgrading. That was the whole point of doing these now, prior to my in-depth look at the series. These are really good, actually, I have to say. There's nowhere near as much dust as we've seen on previous ones, and when you look at it, the actual tops of the books are quite, they're not white, but they're not bad. They're not like when we've done old Penguins, for example, where literally you need to they almost need hoovering before I give them a brush because they're that dusty. Lovely. Alright, let's pull this last pile over, which is actually slightly bigger than the other ones. So doing 2 wedges here. So I'm thinking, because of the, while I've been doing this, I've been thinking that because of the sort of upheaval in the office, whilst I pull all these Doctor Who books out, it may be wise to do part 2 next week, so that all the Doctor Who has been done, and then I'll get back to the sort of large formats. And it's been a while since we've done any vintage Pans and Penguins and stuff, so we ought to not neglect those, of course, because they're not going anywhere. They all still need cleaning. Lovely. Got this last little batch here. Now, I think before we do the polishing bit, I'm going to clear out those badges, because basically they've just got dusty. So and what we'll do, we use the cloth and we'll get these cleaned up. So we've got a couple of Matchbox jackets for Star Trek the motion picture. So well, there you go. Quite nice on there. I don't know where I got those. Actually, I have a feeling one of my Patreon supporters got me those for a little offer for some Star Trek memorabilia. It's the classic Who logo, isn't it? So I've got some. That's a Target one there. These are just dusty, that's all it is. That's a Star Trek casino chip, I believe. Yeah. I think that was, yeah, from the Las Vegas Hilton, where they would often have a Star Trek convention. So I've got these ones here. There was a set of 5 or 6, and these were ones which were in cereal packets. So let's get these. I said they're all fine, they're just dusty. Really, really dusty. So if I can give them a wipe off. Yeah, they come out nice and clean again, don't they? Right, that's all the Star Treks. Now these ones here were a set of 6 Doctor Who's which came out in Sugar Smacks in Britain for the Jon Pertwee era. Once again, they're all just dusty. I used to have a pin board for my badges, and I might revive that. I've got loads of Star Wars ones, stacks of them. Right, now these ones here, these tiny little ones, these are done in the same style as those earlier ones, but these are much more recent, they're modern bootlegs. This one here actually is the original mail-in Target Books badge. It's really scarce, this one. There's no real way to differentiate it, except I know that it's an original one, because I got this from John Fitton, the long-time Doctor Who memorabilia dealer, and it was his original one for when he was a kid. So there you go. And that was released sort of about 74, that little Target badge. And there's not many people who got that one in their collection. But these are great. I love these little 60s style. So I have these all out on display on top of a run of books. There we are. So that's all there. Good stuff in there. All looking nice and clean. Right. Last step of the process then is we need to do some polishing. Okay then. So clean bit of cloth. Got my first book. Oh, now this Mr. Sheen's quite low, but I do have another tin on standby. So we'll use this up first of all and then see how we get on. Let's just let that soak in for a bit. There we are. Now, I don't think these 60s ones are too bad. Because I tried to get really nice copies anyway, but it's not going to hurt putting them through the process quite carefully. Let's put them over there so we can have another look through as we go through these. Admire the jackets. Sure everything is in picture. So I hope you've enjoyed looking through these Doctor Who books. I certainly have. It's been 4 years, almost to the month, give or take, since I last had these out, and I very much got the desire to finish the set off now. So they're back on the... Once I finish going through them next week, because I think I have decided, rather than skip a week, we'll just do part 2 literally next week. So you can see the rest of the Target run. Some more signed editions. I've got the Doctor Who Missing Adventures, and I've got the large format, and some other Doctor Who related bits and pieces that are all with these Doctor Who books. So I think it'll make sense to do them all in one hit. So we'll do those next week, I think. And then we'll be back to the normal bits and pieces. I've still got lots and lots of large format to do, and cartoon books and graphic novels, and stacks of it. So we're not going to be running out anytime soon. What is in short supply is time. But as long as I keep myself organised and try and do one a week, which I am trying to do, we'll be fine. And as I said, although I've got a busy old period coming up with work and what have you, I have also got a bit of time off before then to get ahead of the game. So I don't think you'll notice any more blips in service, with a bit of luck. So whilst I was in London, I did do some filming. So I did a little tour of hidden London, and that was a trip to Euston Tube Station, and there was parts of the platform at Euston that have been closed since the early 1960s, so they got all the old posters on the walls and that. So I filmed a bit of that, what I could, and then we went to the London Transport Museum afterwards, which was also great fun. And the day after that, we went to the Museum of Brands. Now that really is a fantastic place. Now it's the collection of a chap called Robert Opie, and he published these great books in the 80s and 90s, the scrapbooks they were called, and they were full of memorabilia split down by decade, and it was basically his collection, or at least a tenth of his collection, but it filled an entire museum. And it's just astounding, and I was okay to film in there, so I've got a video which is almost an hour long, going through the display cases and having a look at it, and it really is quite an eye-opener. So yeah, recommended. And lots of Doctor Who in there as well, some cabinets with Doctor Who toys and games and things like that. So if you like Doctor Who, check that video out, it's worth it. But yeah, Robert Opie was a very clever chap in the fact that he did collect these this stuff when most people just weren't keeping it at all. And it's not just tangible stuff like, people would save toys, or they might save board games or books. That's not the case. Robert Opie was a guy who collected packaging. So he collected old beer cans and cigarette packets and cleaning products and things like that. That's not the sort of stuff that you would ordinarily save, but he did, and he was ahead of his time. And the collection is just outstanding, and it's been put into this museum, which is only a tenner to get in, and I spent a few hours there with my wife. And well, have a look at that video, because the video itself is about an hour long, and it really is quite something. And if you've never heard of Robert Opie, you'll find that he is, I think he's unique. There's lots of people who are like collectors. I'm a bloody crazy collector. However, there are certain people in the world, and he is one of them, who he collected stuff before anybody collected stuff, you know, and that it really is to be commended. I mean, the guy should have a medal with the stuff that he's preserved for history, because so much of this would have been lost. A lot of it, you know, for example, in the video, he's got a cabinet with old like Cadbury's products in, and I've been to the Cadbury's museum in Birmingham, and they don't have anything like the selection of stuff that in their museum that Robert Opie's got. And some of the stuff that's in the Cadbury's museum is actually like repro. It's sort of not the original thing, whereas all Robert Opie's stuff is the genuine thing. It's all from the period, and some of it goes back almost 130 years now. So unless you actually see it, you're not going to appreciate just how mind-blowingly good it actually is. So I recommend, if you are into that old sort of stuff, I do a little commentary of what we're looking at in the display cases, because it certainly warrants it. And I think you'll find that the actual cases themselves, well, they're just absolutely full of stuff. So yeah, check out my trip to the Museum of Brands, because I think you'll if you like this sort of stuff and you like my channel, which has got, you know, predominantly old stuff on it, you'll find that there's a lot of stuff in there of interest. All right, let's get the next pile out. All right, that's the first wedge done. This looks like wedge number 2. I think we're going to need a little bit more of a squirt. So I had to temporarily pause there while the next door neighbour's kids had come up from school and were playing in the garden. So getting a little bit rowdy out there. So I thought I'd give it a miss, have a little break, get myself a coffee, which is what I've done just before I finish this last little batch off. These videos are supposed to be relaxing, as well as hopefully slightly educational, if you're interested in the books, of course. I think most of these are actually benefiting from having the wipe over. And certainly these early ones had some marks on them. They weren't perfect by any means. So it's good to give them the clean. Again, eating through the old polish here today. Got a bit more that way. It's like each book, I'm just taking a little bit off, but just a little mark here and there, which is ended up on the book over the years. On the whole, because I've tried to get nice ones when I've found them, these aren't bad at all, but it's just like each one's, because they've never been done, each one's got a tiny little mark here or there, and they're really sort of benefiting from the once over, which is great. Come out really nice, this one. Virtually mint, virtually. Nice Brainer Morbius. A great story. This is in pretty nice nick, this one. Last one for this pile. Brilliant. Right. A few classics in there. Stuff. Right, that's half the polishing done. Next wedge. Right. Bit more polish again. Give these the once over. So I have got another trip to my friend Bob's planned for next week. Bob lives in Dorset, and he's got those incredible, beautiful high-grade paperbacks in his collection, and he's going to let me film his personal collection this time round. He's going to pull a few selected gems from that as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So I must make sure my wants lists are fully up to date. And he has actually got a Doctor Who book that I need there, so I shall make sure I grab that one. Whilst I'm there. And if you want to see my sort of regular pickups, I usually do one about every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on if I've actually had much new books come my way. They're on the main channel, and they're just sort of my regular pickups videos, so give them all a pickup and a clean and show you what I've had come my way. It's usually a good mix of stuff. So one with a faded spine. Yeah, I'd say these books have probably got quite a bit to answer for in my collecting history, to be honest. But we'll let them off since they're so cool. quite a lot of books here, isn't there? I don't know how many we've done today, but it must be close to 100, I would think. At least 80. They're definitely looking much better than they did, which was predominantly dusty, more than anything. They were just dusty books. But as I say, because I bought these mainly, I tried to get really nice high grade ones, and sometimes I bought job lots and I was comparing them, so I had 2 or 3 of each one, or some of them. I always kept the best looking ones, so they have already had upgrades upon upgrades over the years, so they weren't awful condition, as I didn't expect, but they were mixed, should we say, and a couple that definitely still need upgrading. I'm not happy with them compared to they're bringing the rest of them down, so I don't want that. Of course, there's a lot of books in this pile because they're so thin. This was the thin period, so there's a lot of books that needed polishing individually. That's okay. We can handle it. Right, so these last couple are the end of stack 3, which seems to be a little bit bigger than the other stacks. But that's okay. Right, let's get the last lot out. Right, last little bit now, last pile, and then we'll be done for this week. But as I said, I think since I've got all the Doctor Who books out, it just makes sense in the studio where these are. They're in the office, in fact, for me to do the second part of the Doctor Who's next week. So I shall attempt to actually get that filmed this coming weekend, and I can put them all back in place. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed looking through these Who books. They have been great, I have to say. And I think on the whole, we've caught a few little marks and bits and pieces that were wrong with these, and they definitely look much better than they did. these later ones aren't in such bad nick. Just sliding the cloth over them. They're all pretty nice, to be honest, from what I can see. These are quite nice additions. Not needing hardly anything at all. Just going over them for the cursory sake of doing it, just in case there is any little marks. So there you go. So as I round out the last of the Doctor Who books, I hope you've enjoyed seeing these today. And as I said, back on schedule now. So hopefully not going to have any missing weeks for the foreseeable future. Don't forget to check out the backlist on the channel. There's lots of older videos as well, which deserve your attention if you get a chance to watch any. Do please make sure you have subscribed, and also that you give the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know that you've enjoyed it, because it sends it out to more people for them to hopefully find the channel. The plan then will be, next week we'll do Doctor Who Part 2. Then the week after that, I think we ought to get back and do another little wedge of large format books. And then we'll have Pan and Penguin to do as well. So I think that's going to be the next few weeks' plan, the next month or so anyway. Don't forget, if you want slightly more regular videos over on my other channel, just look up Jules Burt and you'll see lots and lots of a variety of stuff, you know, toys and books and reviews of books and magazines and books about books. I do all sorts over there nowadays. There's quite a variety. I do a bit of retro gaming as well. So if you've not checked out my main channel, do go over and take a look and hit the subscribe button over there as well. Thanks very much for watching today. Thanks to my Patreon and channel members as well. And I shall look forward to seeing you again with another batch of Doctor Who in a week's time. Bye.